Hello, everyone. This is the Ponder assignment for week two. The class is CS364 Software Engineering 1. I'm going to talk about elicitation techniques, specifically about interviewing. Okay, so a little overview about interviewing. This is a very traditional elicitation method, meaning that we as humans, we've all been in an interview and we know how it is. It's a very natural thing because we talk to each other. So an interview, we sit down with someone and we ask questions, we have a conversation, we can have some follow-up from the person we're talking to. Um, those are the basics in an interview. That's why it's a very common elicitation method because this is natural. It's not just it's very common. So it is very common in real life, and it can be very common in as an elicitation method as well. So this is an adaptive technique. Depending on the situation or the data you're looking for, you can adapt it. So it can be very flexible. So if you have no idea about the domain or the requirements you're looking for, if you have the right stakeholder, you can start asking some general questions and then some follow-up and find the answers you're looking for. Or maybe you do some research first, you understand the domain, then you develop some questions or follow-up that you need more information. Then you go to a stakeholder and ask those questions and obtain these very important information. So it's very adaptive. And variable, the results they are variable because sometimes you may not ask the best questions, or the stakeholder may not be the best person to ask the questions you're looking for. So it depends. Sometimes you have the right technique and a wrong person, or you have the right person but the wrong technique. So the results may vary depending on how you perform. Okay, so let's talk about the types of interviews. We have three. So let's talk about one extreme side of the spectrum, which is structured. So we have structured interviews, and the best example for this is job interviews. So in the job interview, the recruiter knows exactly what he or she wants. They have a profile and information about the requirements for the opening that they have, and they are going to ask those questions trying to find information or the candidate that they are going to hire. So it's very structured. It's a very formal setting. They have a scheduled time to do that. They have the questions and they know exactly what they're looking for. They want to know if this person fits or not. And in requirement solicitation, this may equal to a situation where you do your research about the domain first. You have an idea of the requirements, but then you have more questions about some specifics, or you want personal experiences with those requirements that you found. So you're going to write down a very specific and structured interview. You're going to sit down with the stakeholder, ask the questions. If you start reading off the topic, you're going to bring it back and go through everything. So this is this is an example of a structured interview. And then on the opposite side, we have unstructured interview. In his example, you don't have too much or any knowledge about the domain, and you want to start somewhere. So you find one of the stakeholders and start asking open-ended questions. And then if you find something interesting, you can ask more specific questions and go down this route. And then in the middle, we have a merge of the two. So we have semi-structured interviews, and this is very self-explanatory. You may pick a methods from one or the other, and this is going to be a semi-structured interview, meaning that maybe you're going to have some questions, but you don't have all the questions because you don't understand the domain so well. So you're going to ask follow-up questions. Maybe you don't schedule it. You see the stakeholder and you may have an informal conversation, and this might be a semi-structured or a unstructured interview. Okay, so let's talk about the pros of using interviews as an elicitation technique. So they're more flexible than questionnaires. So a little refresher on questionnaires. It's important to have an understanding of the domain, meaning that you're gonna know what you're looking for. You have to understand the domain and then have some specific questions about it. So you can write down the questions in a way that lots of people can answer those questions, and then you can make sense of these data. With the interviews, it can also be very detailed with the structured interviews, but you can also be very flexible and open-ended. So that's why interviews are more flexible than questionnaires, even though they are similar. Uh, Interviews, they review hidden information, meaning that if you have, again, the right stakeholder with the right questions, you may find something that is not available in the documentation. So this information be very valuable, and interviews are a good way to find this information. They're faster to arrange. So in group work, for example, you have to find the best schedule to have everyone in a group to work together using the group work elicitation technique. But for interviews, since usually you're talking with one person, you can have more than one, but it's faster to arrange with one person, and it can happen out of an accident as well. If you see someone, you can go and ask quick questions if needed. And large amounts of data can be collected in a sense of if you have a questionnaire, that's the data you're gonna get. But if you have an interview and you find some specific information you didn't know and you need more clarification, right at the spot, you can go down and ask those questions. So a lot of very valuable data can be collected using interview as an elicitation technique. Now the cons, there's no clear way to start. Since there are lots of ways to do interviews, sometimes you can use interviews in the beginning of the elicitation process to have an idea of what you need, or you can use it at the end, at the middle. You may be prepared, you may be not prepared. So there's no clear way to start. There's no perfect way to perform these interviews. It's time consuming if you want to interview a lot of people because it takes time scheduling everyone, sitting down, asking those questions, and also processing all this information, recording the information, what time, if you're going to use your notes, if you're going to use voice recorders, videos, or just your mind, but then processing everything, so it's time consuming. Um, it's the performance of the interview is affected by the skill of the interviewer. So let's say you're doing a unstructured interview because you don't have any idea about the requirements. But if you don't ask the right questions, you're not going to go deep enough and get the information you need. And some topics may be neglected if you don't ask the right questions. So you may have the perfect person, but you don't get the information out of them. Okay, so let's go for an example. So this is the example of interview that I made. So we have our app, our app to identify plants. So I have a student from the agronomy department, and I had some questions prepared, but I also went down asking for more details. So I asked if the person was interested in plants at all to understand if they would use an app like that or not. Um, Asked if they had any specific app or if they would use Google Lens or Apple Lens, um, and ask for some more clarification, um, and ask about features that if this person, what features this person would like or not. Um, this was a good example of a semi-structured interview. I learned what the student would like in his app, including accuracy and also um, the class of the plants and some details that she gave me. And she also said that she's fine with the app that she has. There are lots of options. She said that all her peers in the agronomy use those apps, and those apps are incentivized by their teachers. So I was using my notes, and I was recording the audio for this interview. Um, for a conclusion, this is a very common elicitation method, and it's very flexible in a ways that you can apply. You can apply in the beginning, middle, or end, and you can get great results. For the questions, what's the most flexible elicitation method? You have interview out of these options. Questionnaires are the best way to survey large numbers of people. Um, the best the best ways to collect large amounts of data are interviews, and the skill of the interviewer affects the quality of the interview. And those are my sources. Thanks for watching.